Actually, I'm a bit embarrassed that I know that you reached out to me in the past, but I had just been
I know.
completely swamped.
No, I know. I
Uh,
know. I know.
but
Okay, hold on. We're
sure.
about we're about to go live. Don't We're about to go live. Hold on. Hold on. Let me get them. Welcome back. Thank you so much for joining us here in Living in Mexico. Boy, this is a really important week for Mexico and the world. We are probably witnessing a change in the way commerce works, and it's going to have an enormous impact on Mexico, just based on the statements made by President Donald Trump this week, which affects it's affecting the auto industry, like I said, around the world, but it's having an important impact on Mexico. I don't know, maybe it's a historical impact. Joining us today, and I really appreciate him joining us, Juan Carlos Baker. He's been joining us throughout the years, even when he was at the Ministry of Economy. He was a deputy, he was in charge of the negotiation of all these trade agreements. Juan Carlos, just put into context what happened this week and the impact this is having on Mexico. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Ana Maria. Always happy to be here with you and with your audience. No, as you say, there are several things happening. It's actually complicated even to keep track of how many things are happening at once. But I think that you are right when you say that these past few days we have seen enormous challenges for the North American integration, the U.S. bilateral trade integration in particular, surfacing. And the next milestone, I suppose, that we will have to look at is what's going to happen on April the 2nd, because that's the moment when Donald Trump announced that several of his tariffs, the so-called reciprocal tariffs, I'll tell you what those are in a minute, will be announced. And that goes hand in hand with what President Sheinbaum has said, because unlike other countries that have responded quickly and in kind, setting its own tariffs against U.S. exports,
Mm-hmm.
Mexico has said that we are going to wait, that we will be prudent. We have been
Mm-hmm.
prudent for 2 months, apparently, towards this milestone of April the 2nd, because by then the president is going to offer what she calls a comprehensive and integral
Exactly.
answer to any
Mm-hmm.
of those, to all of those
Mm-hmm.
threats. But regardless, Ana Maria, I fully concur with you. Whether it's another turn on the side, whether it's
Mm-hmm.
a more serious challenge to the very existence of the USMCA, the
Mm-hmm.
reality is that we are just mere days away of seeing a full reshaping of the North American trading relationship.
Well, not the reshaping of world trade in general, I would say. I mean, and of course, the impact on North America is quite quite well, it's is shocking. But I think this is kind of a reinventing commerce as we know it. Let me ask you this. As of right now, what is the impact on Mexico's exports, auto exports to the United States? I think
Well,
there's a lot of confusion, right?
it is very confusing. That's correct. Let me, in order to answer that question, let me break down for your audience what are currently the three sources of tariffs that Mexico could be potentially facing.
Hmm.
Because depending on that is whether some waivers can be awarded or not. Depending on the source of that tariff, is if it is applicable or not to exports. So again, it's very confusing, but let me explain it to the best of my ability. Um, on once that Donald Trump was sworn into office, he called on an emergency in the southern border
Hmm.
under the justification of security, drugs, and fentanyl. Okay, he used a a law that is called IEPA, International
Hmm.
Economics Emergency Powers Act. So there are right now tariffs under the IEPA justification of 25%. Those are the tariffs that were suspended a couple of weeks ago for all the goods that are exported to the US meeting the USMCA rules of origin. All right. That covers roughly about half or 60% probably of the Mexican exports. So that means that about 30%, 40%, depending on who you ask, pay tariffs. So
But
that's
that's been
25%.
canceled. But that's what that was postponed, right? Or
It is
no?
postponed
Hmm.
for those goods that meet the rules of origin. But
Okay. Right.
as I said, anywhere between a third or 40%, up to 40% of the Mexican exports do not comply with the rule of
Hmm.
origin. So that
Right.
means that there are some exports that are paying the IEPA tariff, let's call it.
Hmm.
All right.
Hmm.
So that's one basket of 25%.
Okay.
In addition to that, on March the 12th, I'm sorry, another 25% was imposed on exports of steel and aluminum. That one was justified under Section 232 of the Trade Act and national security. So
Right.
that it doesn't really matter for that if the steel is originating or not. If you are in that industry, you pay another 25%. Okay? That
Hmm.
one is enforced right now. Now, the
Hmm.
third potential basket of tariffs comes from what was announced 2 days ago, which is on cars,
Hmm.
another 25% for cars exported to the United States. In the case of Mexican cars
Hmm.
that meet the rule of origin, a potential discount can be given if you subtract the US content of that car. That means that if a car is worth $15,000 and there are $5,000 worth of components, raw material, labor, and what have you
Hmm.
of US, those $5,000 will be subtracted from the value of the car,
Hmm.
leaving it at $10,000. And then the 25% on cars will be calculated on the basis of 10,000 and not 15. Okay. But you will
Okay.
still pay tariff. That is the third potential source of tariffs. Now, the fourth and final, and I'm sorry that this is taking so long, but it's important to understand it. The fourth and last potential origin of tariff is what the US president has referred to as the reciprocal tariff. Okay?
Hmm.
Now, if we go by the definition of reciprocal offered by the Webster's dictionary,
Hmm.
all right,
Hmm. Right.
we should get zero tariff coming from that source because NAFTA and then the USMCA eliminated those tariffs also many years ago. But there is a rumor going around that Treasury Department and others are going to interpret that value-added tax, the IVA,
Oh.
is going to be treated as a disguised quote unquote tariff. So
Hmm.
in Mexico, you have two IVAs, 10% that is paid in the northern border and
Hmm.
16% that is paid on the rest of the country.
Country.
All of this comes down to, Ana Maria, a
Hmm.
product that is not originating, okay, pays currently right now the
Hmm.
25% IEPA because it's not originating.
Hmm.
If that product happens to be from the steel and aluminum industry, it
Right.
also pays another 25% because of Section 232 if that product has the very bad luck of being from the automotive or auto parts industry, very likely is going to pay another 25%
Hmm.
based on what was announced 2 days ago. And if, surprise, surprise, the reciprocal tariff does
Goat.
come in the form of this,
Hmm.
potentially another 10 or 16% will be added. So as you can see, we are facing probably tariffs up to 75% for some goods. And
Hmm.
when you consider that Mexico exported worth goods worth almost $500 billion
Hmm.
to the United States, well, you do the numbers. So it is very, very significant. We're speaking about
Hmm.
hundreds of billions of dollars, hundreds of millions of dollars in this in potential
Hmm.
additional cost to our exports.
The president and her secretary of economy said that they're looking to negotiate with Donald Trump some kind of either exemptions or reductions of this. I'm just not too sure what that's going to look like. Do you have any idea? One, if it's going to happen, it has to happen. I just can't imagine everything like something, Mexican car be, having a 75% tariff. But anyway, um, do you think that there is the possibility of negotiating with this administration?
Well, that's clearly what the Sheinbaum administration, Secretary Marcelo Ebrard, Undersecretary Luis
Hmm.
Rosendo Gutierrez, that's clearly what they've been attempting to do in the past
Hmm.
few weeks. And
Hmm.
I have to say, though, that I mean, I know that I just described a very bleak scenario,
Hmm.
but the reality is that what I described, some of those tariffs are not yet enforced. All right, they
Hmm.
could be in a few days. Okay,
Right.
and in order to avoid those tariffs, that is precisely the negotiation that the Mexican government is conducting right now. How
Hmm.
successful they would be remains to be seen. I believe that there are no economic or trade justifications for imposing these tariffs. In
Hmm.
fact, it's actually worse. We are at the point, Ana Maria, ironical and sarcastically point where we are being punished because we have a USMCA. You know,
Right.
other countries are better off than we are right now,
Hmm.
and I think that the Mexican government is presenting that argument. Unfortunately, I believe that
Hmm.
President Trump is bent on imposing tariffs because that's what he wants.
Right.
So, can negotiations alleviate some of these tariffs? Yes, they can, and I am
Hmm.
hoping that those negotiations are successful and we have some relief on
Hmm.
this. Uh, but I believe that also we need to be prepared for the very likely scenario where tariffs are going to be imposed, and for all intent and purposes, the duty free that is enshrined in the USMCA, well, is no longer applicable.
Wow. That's incredible what you said. And do you think we're running out of time? One last question. I mean, do you think there is any possibility of Donald Trump changing his position
Yeah,
between in April 2nd?
yeah, I mean, it won't be the first time
Right.
that he changes his mind, but that's precisely what I referred to in my earlier comment.
Hmm.
Uh,
Hmm.
I mean, he changes his mind now and then, but expecting him to go and say, you know what, I was wrong, forget about those tariffs, we
Right.
go back to zero. I mean,
It's hard.
it's hard, and even he understands that at some point he's got to do it because if not, all credibility will be lost,
Hmm.
right? Um,
Right.
and I was in the other day with some friends from the
Hmm.
financial world,
Hmm.
and I asked them, how come that the exchange rate and other variables are not
Hmm.
really reflecting what's happening and the says and the threats of Donald Trump? They
Hmm.
say one of them says back to me, well, because he's going to change his mind anyway, right?
Wow.
But again, uh, he does when he
It's a
does,
risk. Yeah.
and he doesn't when he doesn't. The
Right.
uncertainty is really what's killing us more than the
Right.
tariffs.
Let's do this. Please come back next week and we'll find out what happened. I mean, it because I mean, we just, everything is just so up in the air. And I think there's some expectation that maybe he'll walk back at least a little bit. Otherwise, it's like detonating the nuclear bomb and you just can't go back. So anyway, thank you so much, Juan Carlos Baker. He's the former negotiator of all these trade agreements, especially the USMCA, NAFTA, that Mexico has with the United States. It's a very clear, and you were very clear. I'm still shocked of the number of tariffs that Mexico is facing. Thank you so much. We're going to go to a break. I'm Ana Maria Salazar. Thank you so much for watching Living in Mexico. I'll be